Well, good morning. I'm Martin Tyner with the Enoch Wildlife Rescue, and my beautiful wife here, Susan,
Good morning.
and of course our wildlife ambassador today. This is Belle, the Harris hawk, and so we're going to be talking about Belle and a little bit about Harris hawks and a little bit about the captive breeding of them and those kinds of things. And you guys see me all the time. But Susan's behind the camera, and she takes a lot of the videos that you get to see of me out with working with the animals, and so you don't get a whole lot of chance of actually seeing my beautiful wife, and so we brought her out here for everybody to visit with. So again, open discussion, anything you'd like to know about Belle and their foundation and those kinds of things. And also if you have questions about Susan, like why in the heck did she marry such a weird old guy like me, but she's been my best friend for 46 years now, and I couldn't have asked for a better partner, both in life and in business, and helping us with our wildlife rescues. So Susan's here to answer your questions as well. Well, let's talk a little bit about Belle. Belle is a Harris hawk. Belle Harris hawks normally come from southern Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas, but this little gal came out of a captive breeding program in Louisiana. Now, there are several birds of prey that are captive bred for falconry, and Belle is one of those. And so, but she was hatched in a breeding project in Louisiana. Now, pretty young ladies in the South are referred to as Southern Belles. And so that's where she got the name Belle from, because she's my little Southern Belle. Not because she wears a bell, but because she's from the South. And so that's where she got her name. She's a great example of a hawk. I mean, we've had Helen and we've had Piper out here during the Vlogmas, and so you kind of see the difference between hawks and falcons. And as I've always said, falcons always have black eyes, where hawks can have brown eyes, blue eyes, gray eyes, yellow eyes, red eyes. All falcons have black eyes, and so Belle here has brown eyes. So you can see that she's definitely not a falcon. She's a hawk. Falcons have pointed wings. Hawks have so many pretty wings. They're rounded, and so they're not as fast as a falcon, but they're more agile than a falcon. Falcons have relatively short legs because they catch their quarry in the air, where the hawks have these much longer legs, that you can see here, because the hawk catches things on the ground and has to reach through the sagebrush and rabbit brush and reach the branches of trees to catch whatever they're hunting after. So their legs are much longer. The feet, much thicker, much more powerful, much stronger feet than any falcon. And of course, the tail. We were just talking about Belle's tail here. Let me bring her in so you can.
Beautiful tail.
Long tail on my Harris hawk here, because has to fly in and out of trees and around brush and those kinds of things to catch her quarry. And so that big tail makes her a lot more maneuverable than what a falcon would be. And so she's much more efficient than a falcon. On a good year, when the rabbit populations are high, she will catch between 80 and 100 jackrabbits. So she's my most efficient hunter of all the birds and all of our wildlife ambassadors that we have here. And she gets to eat her share of what she catches. And then we bring the rest of the dead rabbit back to our center here and butcher it out as food for the injured wildlife that we care for. So anytime I get free food, that's wonderful. And she helps provide food for the additional wildlife that we work with. Well, do we have any questions, Dee Dee, or greetings?
We've got some comments. Julie says,
Okay.
I love this, so wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
Lori S. says, beautiful. And Alora is here and says, oh, we get to see Susan today. Good morning, everyone.
Let's say hi, Susan.
Good morning, Laura. Hi, everyone.
And
Yeah, go ahead.
one more thing we forgot to mention is, in addition to Susan, is co-author.
Susan, grab the book, Sue. Susan is co-author of my book, Healer of Angels. And, that's 40 years of wildlife rescue stories and the wisdom of grandparents. Move a little closer to me. There you go. And so if you like animal stories, that's a great animal story read. And on the inside of the front cover of this book, uh, both Susan and I, that doesn't have Susan and my autograph in
Oh,
it
this
yet.
is missing a page.
Yeah, Susan and I autographed the book if you purchase it from us. But this is my Eagle Scout. That's his footprint. So he autographs every copy of the book that is purchased through our website. So if you want a fun book with lots of stories of wildlife rescue and me working, trained my first elephant that I worked with, and big cats, and also stories about Susan and I, how we met, and our first date, and those kinds of things. It's a fun read.
Bird just like her.
Yeah.
Except you're much nicer, Belle. Sorry, I'm moving my hands. I need to stop moving.
So yeah, it's a fun book.
Vintage VG says, "Why does Belle have a bell? She is beautiful, by the way."
Yes, Belle is a beautiful young lady, and the reason she has a bell is because we go out hunting rabbits out through the sagebrush and rabbit brush deserts. And the sagebrush and rabbit brush can be, shoulder height or head height. And she'll chase a rabbit, 100 yards, even 200 or 300 yards if needs be. And in the process of doing that, if she catches the rabbit, she's on the ground in a very heavy brush, and I have to go pick her up because she's got the rabbit and she's going to sit right there, kill the rabbit, and start to have her breakfast. And so as I'm walking in the direction that she has flown, and she's killing the rabbit and starting to feed, you hear that bell ring. And so that helps us to locate her.
So we got some movies and some photos. When would you like to go through those?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go ahead and get those started.
Which, the movie or the photos?
Let's start with the photos.
Okay. So that's going to go to Baby Belle.
This is Belle when we first brought her home. You see, she looks a whole lot different in that photograph than she does in person, because that's her juvenile colors. Even though she's full grown, that's as big as she's going to get, same size that she is right now. But if you'll notice that her breast is splotchy, kind of a cream and brown colored. The red on her shoulders is much paler. Her tail is actually banded, and so that's her juvenile color. And of course, right now, Belle, we've had her for 6 years. She has her full adult colors, and so go ahead and bring her back up so you can see her. She's beautiful black, very red shoulders, very red thighs, and instead of a banded tail, it's a solid black tail with a big white band on her rump and a big white band on her tail. So this is what an adult Harris hawk looks like. All birds of prey have their juvenile feathers for the first year or 2 or 3 years, depending on the species, and then they drop the juvenile feathers and grow their adult feathers. Now, this is a newspaper article of my captive breeding program, and so I actually bred Harris hawks for a number of years, and so this is not any of the birds that I have now. We're talking, more than 30 years ago that I had this breeding project, and so the top picture is a Harris hawk named Thumper, and the bottom two pictures are baby Harris hawks from the project. And this is a great picture I love to show everybody. This is a baby Harris hawk that I just assisted out of its egg. And so this little Harris hawk hatched in my hands, and that little Harris hawk was the last baby of my breeding project. And he and I were best friends, and we stayed together as hunting companions and best friends for 29 years. So that's a baby Harris hawk fresh out of the egg.
That was Thumper.
That was Thumper. And of course, this is Thumper. The little tiny one is an hour old. That's the baby Harris hawk fresh out of the egg. And the one next to it is a week old. So you can see how fast these birds grow from the time they hatch at an hour old. From the time they hatch to the time they're full grown and flying is about 9 weeks. And so they grow at a tremendous rate of speed. On the larger one, you can see a band on its leg, and that's its federal marker. And when we come back on a picture of Belle, I can show you Belle's federal marker. And you can see, let me bring it right up here.
Just above her Jessie.
Right above the Jessies, you'll see that metal band, and that metal band has a basically a serial number on it that the federal government can look up and says, okay, this bird came from this captive breeder and is currently owned by this falconer, and so they actually keep track of where these birds are and who has them, because the general public can't just have these. You have to be properly licensed and permitted. And again, that's another picture of the two of the babies. Again, the baby that's a week old, the one that's an hour old. And at this stage, the one that's an hour old is basically its eyes won't focus, just like a newborn human baby. Their eyes don't focus. It takes them a few days before their eyes focus well enough. So at this stage, they don't imprint because they can't see. But once they get like the older one that's about a week old, then their eyes focus properly, and that's when they start to identify with who mom is. And so we have to be very careful to keep them from imprinting on humans. And Belle's a great example. She was in a breeding project, and so she was raised by her mom and dad, and she flew around in a chamber with her siblings until she was about 4 months old. And so she is not imprinted on humans. She thinks she's a Harris hawk.
And she's right.
She's right. This is a homemade brooder that I made for my breeding project. And you can see one little baby inside the breeder with a little bit of fresh straw to help keep it clean. And we had a light bulb in there, and it was regulated as far as temperature goes to make sure that they have just the right body temperature. When these birds are very, very young, they cannot maintain their body heat. Now, as they get older and they get all their downy feathers and they're fluffy and that kind of stuff, they can regulate their body temperature. But at this young age, they can't. So we have to have an artificial environment, because at this stage, we don't have mom sitting on the babies in this captive breeding program. But once they're able to maintain the body heat, then we put them out in the flight chamber with mom and dad, so mom and dad can finish raising them. And this is the incubators that I use, and the eggs that are right at the front, those are the Harris hawk eggs. And the ones that are behind the Harris hawk eggs, those are chicken eggs. Those are brown chicken eggs. And so they're about the same size as a chicken egg, and they're very, very light blue in color. So you can see kind of what they look like there. And again, once they hatch, we get them out of the incubator, get them into the brooder. And again, for the first few days, we hand feed them. But again, the first few days, they can't focus well, so they don't see well. But shortly after that, when they're able to maintain their body temperature, then they go back with mom and dad.
So you need to.
And here's mom and dad out in our flight chamber that we used for the breeding project. And I'll tell you a little story about these guys. And this happens with birds of prey of all kinds all over the world. I have this pair. I have a male and a female. And I would take that pair of Harris hawks, and I put a platform in the middle of the flight chamber that they could build their nest on. And on the platform, and the platform was about 2.5 feet square platform, and I would rim it so that the nesting material would stay on the platform. And I would put in nice nesting material, some nice sticks and grasses and those kinds of things, so the Harris hawks could build their nests. And that was all part of the courtship that they would go through. And it was very interesting because I could sit here and look out my living or my kitchen window and watch the pair in the flight chamber. And I felt so bad for the male Harris hawk, because the males are quite a bit smaller than these females, are a good third or more smaller than the females are. And so the females basically control everything. And so we have this male and female Harris hawk, and the male flies down, and it's courtship time, and the male flies down and grabs a nice clump of nesting material, and he flies over to the perch where the female is sitting, and he shows it to her. He says, "This is some really nice nesting material." And then he flies over to the platform and he arranges it very nicely on the platform for the nest, and the female ignores him. And then he grabs that nesting material, flies back to the female, and shows him the nesting material. Says, "This is really good nesting material. It is springtime, and we do need to kind of get busy here." And he flies back over to the platform, and rearranges it nicely on the platform, and the female ignores him. And then he grabs that nesting material again, goes back to the female, and says, "Please, we're supposed to be doing this pair bonding thing. We're supposed to be, copulating, and we're supposed to be raising babies. We need to get this underway." So he flies back to the nesting platform, rearranges the nesting material very nicely in the nest platform, and then the female will fly from the perch all the way across to the nesting platform, land on the platform, look at the male, scream at him, smack him with her wings, and knocks him right off the platform. And then she proceeds to rearrange the nesting material to her liking. And then she flies back to her perch, and it starts over again, where the male gets another bunch of nesting material and starts the whole process over again. And I kind of acquaint that to all the gentlemen out here. Guys, have you ever had to move furniture for your wife? It says, you can sympathize with these poor birds, how the females are absolutely in control of the whole nesting process. And so that's again in the flight chamber with mom and dad flying around. And that's mom, and as you can see her mouth is open. Basically, she's screaming at me, and kind of right below her is the nesting platform, because she would lay her eggs in the platform, but it was too cold here in Utah, because these birds are found in southern Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. It's too cold here at 6,000 feet here in southern Utah for them to successfully be able to raise the chicks. And so I would have to go in there. I would have to remove the egg that she had laid to put the egg in an incubator, and I would replace the egg that she laid with a white chicken egg that I used Easter food coloring dye on to dye it a light blue, just like we dye Easter eggs. So I would dye the chicken eggs to look just like the Harris hawk eggs, and I would put them back in. And so mom right there is screaming at me. I'm invading her territory. And so I would have to step up, pick up the egg, put the fake chicken egg back in the nest, and then leave. The whole time mom was threatening to kill me. And she would normally lay about 4 eggs at a time. And so in order to up the production of these Harris hawks, what I would do is, once she had laid the full clutch of eggs, and now the eggs were laid about every 3 days apart. And so now we've got about 15 days, and the eggs are going to hatch at about 23, 24 days. What I would do is I would go back in there, and I would take the chicken eggs out, and I would take them, and I would basically damage the nest and kind of rearrange the nest material and stuff so that the pair would start over again. And because they will double clutch, if the first clutch is unsuccessful, if it's early enough in the season, birds will lay a second clutch of eggs. And so, they'd go through the whole process again. They'd go back through the courtship. They would build the nest site. The female would start laying eggs. I start picking the eggs up, putting dummy eggs back in on the second clutch. And by the time that she had laid her last egg in the second clutch, the baby Harris hawks from the first clutch had hatched, and they're getting up to the appropriate eggs to put back with mom and dad. And so once she was done laying eggs and she was brooding on those eggs for a little while, then I would remove the eggs. I'd put the baby Harrishawk chicks back in the nest for mom and dad to finish raising, and mom would fly up to the nest and see these babies in there, and she would look at them and she's going, "Oh my gosh, boy, did they hatch fast!" And so then she would immediately start to feed and care for these chicks that were, about 10 days old, or a week to 10 days old, and they were big, huge, fluffy little chicks, and then mom and dad would just immediately turn from the incubating and brooding phase to feeding the babies, and then mom and dad would continue feeding the babies until the babies were full grown, and in a couple 3 months from that point, it was time to basically send them to their new homes for falconers to use as falconry birds. So that's kind of how the captive breeding program works for these guys. I raised quite a few baby Harrishawks in the years that I had my project. And that's mom and dad. And in the center of the picture, that's one of the babies of this year in the middle of the picture that you can see, and with mom and dad, and just like I said, living in the flight chamber, being raised by the parents.
We ran out of photos.
Well, that's okay. That's so. If anybody has questions on how or why we do this captive breeding, I'd be happy to answer them for you. Captive breeding really came into its own starting in the late 1960s because of the peregrine falcon. The peregrine falcon was the endangered species that you've heard much about, and Helen, our peregrine falcon, is an Anodon peregrine, one of the endangered species. And because of that, falconers brought their peregrine falcons together, created breeding projects. Falconers have bred tens of thousands of peregrine falcons and returned them back to the wild. And now the peregrine falcon is off the endangered species list. So captive breeding really originated big time because of falconers attempting to save the peregrine. And the lessons that we learned from the peregrine falcon, we've been able to apply to a lot of other birds of prey, including the California condor and birds of prey all over the world, like the Madagascar kestrel falcon and the Philippine monkey-eating eagle, and different birds that are threatened and endangered. We've been able to breed in captivity and return to the wild. But that also has made birds of prey available to falconers that couldn't have them. I know a lot of other countries here in North America, we're allowed to trap birds of prey from the wild with the proper licenses and permits and the appropriate time of year and that kind of stuff. But there are countries around the world that you can't. And the only way that you can get a bird of prey for falconry in many countries around the world is that you have to purchase one that's been in that's come out of a captive breeding program. And so we've been able to make birds available worldwide for falconry, for our ancient art form.
Shall we roll the falconry video?
Sure. Okay, well, this is Belle. She's a sweetheart, and she's ready for the hunting season to begin. She's kind of a little anxious, aren't you, sweetie, to be able to go out and fly free and chase rabbits tomorrow. Tomorrow is your Christmas day. It's opening of the hunting season for you, so you can go have a ball chasing all the rabbits you want to go chase. So one more day on the crayons. And like I said, we don't have to use the crayons. She comes back beautifully and all of that. But if she basically flies up on top of the pavilion or goes soars the hillside there and she spots, a cottontail or we have chucker in the area, if she spots a chucker or some other protected species, then I'll be poaching. And so, we basically this way she can only fly to and from me for a short distance just to get a little exercise, keep her in the routine, and then tomorrow, you know, all the restrictions are off, and she gets to be a Harris hawk, huh, baby? You get to go play tomorrow. We're so excited. Yes, you are. You're so excited, huh, sweetie? Yes, you are.
She's ready. I'm not gonna wait, Dad. I'm ready.
Yeah. Yeah, she's so well made. I can't even walk away from her fast enough. You know, she knows that I've got her breakfast. Hi, baby. I know you want to keep it, but you can't.
She says, I've got food to pluck.
Like I said, the whole idea is let her stretch her wings a tiny bit, keep her in the routine. Give her her breakfast.
Tomorrow's the wonderful, joyful day.
Tomorrow's the good day, huh? When we get to go play and you get to go chase rabbits. A big girl. Okay. She said, "Are you ready for tomorrow,
So much
sweetie?"
bigger than the falcon.
Yeah, she's a big girl. Ready? She's back on now. Again, this is her hood, and again, the same principles are, you know, that's her stress protection. They have to be able to take that hood quickly and easily, so that you know, we have a helicopter school in Cedar City that will come over here. In fact, they did yesterday. They came over here trying to see how low they can fly through the Parowan Gap, and so they were probably only 20 feet above us. And so I saw the helicopter coming, popped a hood on, helicopter went by, and then took the hood off. She was fine. But if you can't hood your bird like this, there's a lot of stress and a lot of dangers that you'll have a hard time dealing with. So hooding the bird's very, very important. It's not mean. It's their stress protection. I'm pretty Belle. Well, shall we get you home? And tomorrow's the fun day. Yes, tomorrow. Yes, tomorrow. She talks to me.
I love her little talks.
Yeah, she's such a sweet girl.
Try not to fall down.
Tomorrow's the fun day. We get to go play tomorrow. And we've got you ready. Your talons are razor sharp. So you're just Ready and ready to go. Okay, well, that's basically when we've had the bird for a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 50 or 30 years, or whatever. We do have to, before the season starts, get them back in the routine because we're not allowed to take her out and let her pursue quarry um, outside of our honey season. Our honey season is September through February. And so in August, we start getting her back in the routine. We get her down to the appropriate weight. And so that when September 1st comes along, that's our day. September 1st is the first day we can let her literally go out and fly free and chase. And as I said, she doesn't need to have that crayons on her, that string that we use. She would be just fine. But if she did, and she would if she got a chance, if she did, fly up on the ledges and look out over the desert and see, a cottontail, a grouse, a chucker, whatever game quarry that happens to be out in that area, sees one and catches and kills it, then I'm responsible for that. I'm liable, and they would consider me as a poacher. And so we work very, very hard. If we're going to free fly them in areas where there's no game in the area possible for her to chase, and other than that, we do have to keep them contained. But the next day, all of this comes off, and she gets to fly free and chase rabbits. And since we've been in the routine, we're done as far as any training is concerned. Now it's just go out and have fun chasing rabbits and letting her have a ball. So that's kind of how the process works.
MV asks, does the habitat support more falcons considering development and human threats?
Well, no. I can look here in southern Utah where I live, and we are losing habitat like crazy. They're going through and plowing up desert habitat and canyon habitat and those kinds of things, and planting subdivisions. And so, yeah, human encroachment is a real problem. I've got 3 of my peregrine falcon nest sites that no longer have peregrines because the falcons are gone. In fact, one that's really was quite blatant is a subdivision was built right to the edge of a cliff, and so on top of the cliff there's this huge subdivision right now, and literally right below one of the houses was one of my peregrine nests that I'd monitored for years, and of course the peregrines are gone. We do have a bald eagle's nest here in southern Utah. Now we have very, very few bald eagles nesting in Utah. We have thousands of bald eagles that come here for the wintertime, but we had a bald eagle's nest that I've been monitoring for like 30 years, and it's right here just outside of Cedar City. It's everybody knows about the bald eagle's nest, and people love it, and we've been photographing it for forever and ever. In fact, our white-bellied bald eagle that's at the rescue center now came out of that eagle's nest. They right now are building, 3-4 story apartment complexes, basically within 30 feet of the nest. And so that bald eagle's nest, and the bald eagles have been trying desperately to hold on to that nest site, and but I think it's done. I think I seriously doubt the bald eagles will be back this spring because of all of the development that's going on. So yes, we are literally expanding into all sorts of wildlife habitat, and though right now the bald eagle population is good, and the golden eagle population is good, and the peregrine falcon population is good. As we keep destroying habitat, it'll the populations will slowly diminish to the point where southern Utah cannot support some of these more sensitive species, and that's just something we have to deal with.
So, when you talk about the overall population, does I guess like the distribution matter as well as far as how many places that they can hang out in?
Yeah, basically, they need a very specific habitat, and if that habitat is destroyed, then they have to find somewhere else to go. And as the habitats continue to decrease, um, then the numbers of nesting pairs have no choice but to decrease. And in fact, because of the encroachments to a lot of the peregrine habitats, um, I have peregrine falcons now that are nesting in prairie falcon habitat, and they're very different habitats. Prairie falcons like vast open deserts and relatively small cliffs. Peregrines like uh, canyons with a water source of very tall cliffs. But I'm starting to find peregrines nesting in what we would normally consider prairie falcon habitat because they the peregrine habitats full of pairs, and we're getting less and less peregrine habitat available to them. And so things shift, and the bird's ability to adapt to a new environment is the only thing that keeps them alive.
So, is it true that there's places in Alaska where bald eagles are so everywhere they're almost considered like a pest?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Alaska has a huge bald eagle population. Now, what happened to the bald eagle wasn't habitat destruction as much as it was a poison called DDT a pesticide we were spraying our crops with, and the DDT would run off, the water runoff would run into water sources, and get into the fish, and the bald eagles would eat the fish, and the DDT, the higher up the food chain, the more concentrated it gets, and so the bald eagles were getting poisoned from DDT within our water areas, and of course DDT was poisoning us as well. So the bald eagle and the peregrine falcon told us we were using this pesticide very badly, and unfortunately we stopped and stopped using it in very bad ways. So that because of that, the bald eagle has fully recovered, and the peregrine falcon has completely recovered. But again, as long as people keep moving into habitat, the Harris hawk here, like I said, southern Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas, and so these are a desert hawk, and of course, um, tremendously common around Phoenix, Arizona. But Phoenix has exploded, and so much of the Harris hawk habitat has been destroyed in southern Arizona, and so we still have a lot of Harris hawks that are not endangered at the moment, but we're losing habitat for this particular bird, and eventually the Harris hawks will become threatened or even endangered.
James Miller says, we had a peregrine falcon flying around inside our office. All the old ladies were hiding under their desks. Finally caught it with the wastebasket and released outside. Pretty funny.
Well, I can promise you it wasn't a peregrine falcon. It was probably a kestrel falcon, or could have been a Merlin falcon, or could have been a Cooper's hawk or a sharp-shinned. The peregrine falcon is nearly as big as Belle, and is not going to fit in a little trash can. And and so these smaller falcons, I can't tell you how many times I've gone into buildings where the bird has come through an open door, or somebody left a roll-up garage door open, the birds have gone in there. I've actually rescued them out of grocery stores, and because they left the cargo door open for the grocery store, and a little kestrel flew in and it's flying all over the store, and they call me in to try to net it and rescue it. And so it would have been one of those smaller falcons that would have done that. Beautiful little birds, and you know, people don't have to be afraid of them. They're really quite harmless. Um, but people do get nervous with things zipping around in front of them.
Vintage Vet Gal asks, is there anything the average person can do to help stop human developments from encroaching on their habitat?
The I mean, the truth of the matter is, um, humans think very, very little about our environment and our ecosystem. They humans are very short-sighted, and so you know, how do you tell um, uh, the farmer that's across the street from me? How do you tell that farmer who's been basically dedicated his whole life to farming and ranching, and now he wants to retire? Keep it on the plastic. Thank you. That was a good boy or good girl. How do you tell that man that now you have this piece of property and you don't want to farm anymore, and that property is if you sell it, um, will not only make you incredibly wealthy, but makes your children and your grandchildren incredibly wealthy if that property is sold and then subdivided and turned into condos and apartments and housing tracts and that kind of stuff. You know, he has the right to do so, but how do you convince them not to? This is why Susan and I moved out of California, because we grew up in a small agricultural community in Southern California, and 4,000 people, and there's about 200,000 people there now, and the environment there no longer supports wildlife, and Cedar City here is doing exactly the same thing. Cedar City is developing just as hard and as fast as it can, and huge traffic jams in town now, which is horrible. We live outside of Cedar City. We live in Enoch, so it's a little bit better. But in my lifetime, I can picture subdivisions. Where right now, you you know the population goes about a mile north of us, and that's where the desert starts. Excuse me. I can see Cedar City and Enoch continuing to develop, all the way out. Do you hear something?
That was just Cody
Just Cody coughing.
coughing up a hairball. Cody.
Yeah. So I don't know how to stop it, and I don't think anybody knows how to stop it. We would have to change and become um, very conscious of environmental changes and what is right for 100 years, 500 years down the road, and humans don't think that far in advance.
I saw an article recently about somewhere in Oregon, I don't remember exactly where they have some creeks running between towns, and they had just voted to get rid of those creeks in order to put a pipeline to conserve water from evaporating, and it made me think, well, what does that do for wildlife?
Well, and actually, that's one of the reasons we are not building the Cedar Canyon Nature Park. When the Cedar Canyon Nature Park, which was on the east side of Cedar City, that was donated to us by our local electric company, Rocky Mountain Power. A beautiful piece of property, uh, extremely important riparian habitat. Stream comes right through the middle of the property. We have a waterfall, and it's really quite spectacular. And then Cedar City, with its water conservancy district, decided that they wanted to have more water piped out to the valley to where they're building new subdivisions. And so Cedar City uh, basically started to put together a plan to basically develop a water source from that stream and pipe the water underground, um, on the east side of my property, put a water diversion, pipe it underground, and then pipe it to a small reservoir in town that could treat the water for water treatment and then pipe it out for subdivisions. And I got everybody mad at me because, I told them, that stream by law has to pass through my property, and you can't take away that stream. And anyway, make a long story short, Cedar City basically did its very, very best to drive us out, and they finally succeeded. And so that's why the Cedar Canyon Nature Park no longer exists, and the property is for sale, and the property will be developed because Cedar City wants a shopping center there, uh, right there in the canyon at my property. They want a shopping center, they want hotels, they want gas stations, and they want subdivisions in the canyon, and they wanted us out, and so we're out. So now we built that brand new rescue center in Enoch with the help of all of you folks. So that's why we're not in Cedar City any longer. And yeah, it when they do things like that, it destroys the habitat and damages the ability for wildlife to exist. But again, I'll be real honest with you folks. Utah is not a conservationally minded state, and so they would much rather plant houses than habitat.
Chad Weaver asks, has Martin seen any videos of YouTubers driving in suburbs with their Kestrel falcons, flying out the window to catch starlings and sparrows? Is this considered falconry?
Yes, I have seen. I've seen those videos, and not only kestrels, but they have used Merlin falcons. They have used Cooper's hawks and sharp-shinned hawks, and even goshawks to hunt something the size of ravens and crows and that kind of stuff. Driving along, and it's something that can be done. Is it considered falconry? It's considered a style of falconry. It's a style that I don't practice. Um, but I don't. As long as the birds are well cared for, and as long as the birds get an opportunity to fly free and to hunt, I'm not going to begrudge anybody from using techniques that I'm not interested in using. I would much rather take the birds out and fly them as they have been flown for the past 4,000 years. For me personally, but yeah, people do that, and I guess if you live in an environment, you live in a more city environment where you don't have the 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 open areas where you can hunt rabbits and ducks and pheasants and that kind of stuff. But the only thing you've got is, flying, hunting around parking lots where there's sparrows and starlings. That may be the only form of falconry that you can practice. Um, I tell people all the time that if you have to drive more than 15 minutes to fly your bird, you need to move. Because you're not living in an appropriate environment to practice falconry, and the environment is absolutely critical to the kind of bird that you wish to fly.
Terry asks, how is the little owl you had? I can't remember his name.
The little owl's name is Whisper, and he's a western screech owl, and he's as cute as a bug. He's wonderful. Our volunteers, love to hold him, and we bring him out for educational programs. So he's doing perfect. He's up at the rescue center.
So we're coming up on our last 10 minutes, so shall we share our number 3 most viewed video?
Absolutely.
Okay, a portion of it. Number 3, feeding critically ill eagle.
It's okay, sweetheart. It's okay. I'm just gonna get to you for just a minute. Oh, I'll get you for just a minute, sweetie. Oh, that's a good hit. You're feeling stronger, sweetie. I might have to do that. Good girl. You are feeling stronger. That's my girl. Gotcha. Shh. There's my girl. There's my girl. That's my puppy. Okay. Oh, shush, you're feeling stronger. Okay. What a baby girl. Yes, we got you. Very good. Okay, and that's a really good sign, because when the eagle first came in, it couldn't even stand, and so I have a net with a pole that I could net it and grab it, but when I first walked in there, I didn't bring the net in because I didn't think it would put up that big of a fight. And I'll be really honest with you, nothing makes my heart happier than to have a wild animal like that, willing to fight, willing to bite me, willing to hurt me. I think that just does my heart so much good. And again, with the skill level that I have in working with these animals for 58 years, even at that situation, anybody else that would have been incredibly dangerous. But I've been doing this a long time, and got him, get her and get her picked up, and then take her over and start to hand feed her, to keep food going down into her. At that point, she was starting to eat solid food, and she was releasable back to the wild. So it was great to see her wanting to fight with me. I love that. And Susan, you haven't said very much.
It's okay.
It's okay.
I got the easy job.
Yeah, she's.
I just sit here and be close to you.
But when we got married, she hardly said a word. She was incredibly shy, but now I'm surprised I could hardly get her to shut up. And so
I'm trying to behave myself.
You are behaving yourself. I I can be in the very back of the house on the telephone talking to somebody, and Susan will be out here in the living room, and she will be making comments. So if we're ever talking on the phone, you hear Susan yelling, that's just Susan butting in, but we love her.
So Susan, do you have like a totally different sort of vibe on you as far as your presence and your movements when you know that Belle is right there watching every single move you make?
Actually, yeah, I'm trying to be calmer to not bother her because I want to put my hand up and touch Martin, but she noticed that immediately. And she's like, what are you doing? Where's your hand going? It doesn't belong. And now I'm talking. She's looking at me. And she's been paying attention to the screen when Martin talks and had her, when you were calling her to the glove.
Mm-hmm.
And then Piper across the room, he heard you, whistle and talking when you were calling Belle to the glove. And he's just been animated, like, hey, I'm over here, you're ignoring me. And Belle's looked at him. So she's just been kind of looking at everything. But it's like, yep, I need to keep my movements calm so I don't disturb the birds.
Yes, Susan is a little bit more nervous and jittery, kind of around the animals. The animals pick that up, and with me, I can, cuddle with them and be close, and I can move around, and they just sit there and says, "Oh, that's just Dad. That's just Dad. He's abusing me," and that's fine. But but Susan can't do that. She doesn't have, she's really good with domestic. She's,
Domestics tolerate much better than the
yeah,
wild animals.
She's our head groomer and owner of our dog of our Tyner's dog grooming, and she's been grooming for more than 40 years, and she's incredibly good with the domestics, but the wild ones, because of her nervousness, they don't work with her as well.
Well, and I'm finding with age my nerves get worse too, so I'm kind of backing out of grooming and letting the young people take over, trying to pitch in and help where I can, but cutting back on the grooming myself.
So we got a comment from Terry Lee. Susan looks beautiful.
I agree. She's she's such a beautiful young lady, and I fell in love with her very, very quickly, and we've been like I said, just inseparable. 46 years of marriage and a couple 3 years before that dating. She's I can't imagine a moment of my life without her. She's just my best friend.
I'm lucky to have you.
So we have a two-part comment question from LD. What does it take to have your own hawk? Belle is beautiful, and I've always loved birds. I think you and Susan do a wonderful job. I love watching your videos. I'm from Wales in the UK.
Okay, well, the falconry requirements in Utah are very, very different than the UK. And so what you do need to do is contact uh, your government and whatever wildlife. We have what we call this the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, which is our federal government organization, and each state has its own what we call Fish and Game, which is state-run government. And their job is to protect wildlife and deal with hunting and fishing and those kinds of things. And so, what you need to do is contact the UK and find out what their requirements are. Now, in the UK, you're not allowed, from my understanding, to trap birds of prey. In the UK, you have to purchase them through a captive breeding program. But I think the laws and restrictions in order to purchase one is far easier in the UK than it is in North America. Ours is far more complicated.
EH asks, has Scout gotten to fly with wild golden eagles? Also, is he in any breeding programs?
Yes, Scout has definitely flown with the wild eagles, but as far as a breeding program goes, again, here in North America, now in England and Europe and those kinds of things, completely different. But here in North America, the federal government prohibits us from breeding golden eagles. And so we are not allowed to put Scout into a breeding project like I can a Harris hawk, but it's my understanding that quite a few of the countries all through Europe not only allow it, but they encourage it. So in the UK, you would be far easier to purchase an eagle for falconry than you could acquire an eagle for falconry within North America. In North America, it's I was the first person in North America licensed to trap and train a wild eagle in falconry, to be licensed to do so. And so the laws are very different.
So our next little graphic here, so I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble with Susan for this, or maybe we cover Susan's ears for this when we go over the Decorate Martin and the critter list.
Go for it.
Are you sure? All right, it's your fault. It's your fault then. Okay, should we explain first, or?
Sure.
Okay, I gotta find that graphic. Oh wow, it's like barracks. We got so much stuff. Okay, so here's the title thing, and maybe we can summarize for Susan.
Sure. What each of those numbers are? Those are bandages, and so each day we've been putting a bandage on a part of my body that's been injured.
I can't even see. You've got bandages on you?
Well, not yet. The bandages are right here, Susan.
Oh, okay. I see them.
Okay.
I thought they were like packages.
No, those are bandages.
Okay, should we do a quick recap? Here's number 18.
Number 18 is how many times I've been scratched and bit in the face.
Oh my, okay.
And that was the 19. It was the great horned owl when I was Boy Scout summer camp. They grabbed me in the chest. I got 50 stitches in my chest.
Yes.
Let's see. 20 was at the time the
talons through the hand.
Talon went through my hand at Busch Gardens.
Busch Gardens, the eagle talon.
Yes.
21 was fingers.
Yeah.
That happens a lot.
Yeah. How many times I get bit and talons through into my fingers.
Okay, here's number 22 for today. Forearms, many scratches from many critters.
Again, when you're working with these guys, and again, razor sharp talons, and they're on the glove. But if my bird steps here, then those are razor blades on those feet, and I get cut up. That's Susan always gets worried, especially when I handle eagles, that I need to wear a much longer, heavier glove so that the eagles don't puncture my arms. And so that's just.
But you know what? I'm a dog groomer, so I get scratched and bruised and cut from dogs' nails all the time too. So
yeah,
it's something, my mom always says, "Oh, you don't let the dogs scratch you and the cat scratch you." It's like, oh, I guess it's just what we do.
Yeah, when you make your living playing with razor blades, you're going to get cut, and so that's basically what we do.
Luckily, the dogs are much safer to handle than wildlife.
Well, shall we wrap up for the day?
Yeah, why don't we go ahead and call it a day? Thank you, everybody, for visiting with us, and thank you, sweetheart, for coming and being a beautiful presence here, and let everybody see my sweetheart that does so much for the wildlife and does most of the videoing. She deserves a huge amount of credit, and again, she's the co-author that helped me, that we worked together to write our book, and ordering the book from gowildlife.org, all the profits, retail profits from the sale of the book, come to our wildlife rescue center, so it helps us feed the critters. Well, we will see you guys again tomorrow, and
2 more days.
2 more days. Is that it? Couple more days before Christmas Eve. So thank you, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.